I appreciate you recording my high def webcam.
That's yeah. Mine's super high def too. Like if I get up close enough, you can really see the pixels. Anyway, welcome anyone watching on the recording version to our impromptu meeting with ACT. I guess impromptu / scheduled meeting with ACT.
You live and you learn.
Yeah.
Yes. So we have ACT people here, and yeah, they can take it away.
So I think originally what our presentation was supposed to be on was just how to, in this environment with COVID and working from home and not working necessarily connected right next to each other, although we are connected to each other today. How exactly do you, get things started as a new employee? How do you work from home when you don't really have any idea what's going on? And how also, if you are working from home, how do you stand out, or how do you show what you're capable of when you're not necessarily interacting with people on a daily basis and they don't always necessarily know what it is you're doing? One of the things, feel free to chime in if you want.
Honestly, clearly this is an impromptu thing on our side, which was kind of how we all started working remotely, was an impromptu thing. We had about a couple days between when it was announced and when, maybe like 3, when they were like, you should be out of the office by Wednesday. I think, and then you definitely had to be out of the office by Friday.
I think we got like a 2-day notice. And I know this because I was here one day. I was not going to be here the next day. I had PTO or something that day. And we had all just kind of had an idea that something was coming down the pipeline. And everybody's like, make sure you take your computer home. And then the day I wasn't there, it was like, and we're going to go working remotely from now on. You had very little time. Like, you could go in and get your stuff if you had to, but you had very little time to prepare for any of that sort of conversion.
I got kicked out of a client's office the same time I got the ACT email. They said that we were no longer allowed to be in their offices because they were implementing their COVID protocols.
You can't be in here.
You can't be in here.
This is a typical distraction because we're doing a presentation.
We're doing a presentation on how to work in a virtual environment. And you are a great example of what can go wrong when you're working in a virtual environment, when people who don't know that you are on an interview or a presentation and they just knock on your door and come right in, which is typically how things happen at work when you're in person. We were going to do, I will say you guys are going to miss out because we were going to do some really awesome stuff with my cats and their inappropriate behavior when I'm trying to have meetings. So you don't get to meet my cats today. But potentially another time.
But the rest of us do almost every meeting.
Yes.
To the point of having the distraction-free thing, I'm sure that a lot of you guys have already kind of figured this out with doing school remotely and virtually and having virtual interviews, is that you want to make sure you have some set space that is away from everyone. Not only is that going to help with distractions, make sure that if you have meetings that day, like create a sign, like let everyone who might walk into your place if you don't live alone know that, hey, especially during these times from 2 to 3 or 1 to 2, I'm not available. If you have small children, that makes life a little more difficult because they aren't going to pay attention to a sign. They want who they want now. And so you kind of have to plan for those contingencies. But not only does having that dedicated space that is away from everyone help with limiting interruptions when you're trying to present to people and appear professional on meetings, it helps you with your focus. I think that there were times near the beginning of the pandemic when I was like, yeah, I can work from the couch. That's fine. But in front of my couch is a TV and all of the things that I would probably rather be doing than working lots of days.
House cleaning becomes way more appealing.
House
when
cleaning
you're
becomes
supposed to be doing
very appealing. And so if you don't have some dedicated space, some dedicated clean space, because if you've got some stack of things that you've intended to go through for months, but it's there and it's in a room that you're not usually in anyways, when you need to do something complicated at work that takes more thought process, you just start looking at that pile going, I think I need to organize that. I used to get the same feeling around finals, and it'll be like, do I need to study, or do I need to clean my oven? Feels like maybe I need to clean my oven. And that's been a very similar feeling with working remotely. So having some set space that you can focus, it kind of gets you into the mindset of working.
Yes.
I'd also keep in mind what appliances you have running in the background. As a person who lives in a 1-bedroom apartment where my laundry room is my kitchen and my dining room table is my office, I got a few comments on what was that water sound in the background, and it's laundry. It was laundry being run, and I realized that quite quickly I had to move out of my kitchen area from my formal table to my bedroom impromptu because I couldn't stop the washer halfway through the cycle. So, I mean, even your background noises, be consciously aware and pick a spot accordingly.
I had the same thing with the dishwasher when during a meeting, I thought that the dishwasher would be done, that it would only take an hour. It took like 2, and the drain cycle on my dishwasher sounds like someone in the bathroom. It's not a good look.
Yeah.
Was it good?
Yeah, that's all to say that distractions are way up working from home, and it takes a lot more personal responsibility. Like, it's a lot easier to be like, I'm going to keep my head down and work when you know that the boss man's right next door, and if he sees that you're not doing anything, it's very obvious you're not doing anything. But when you're working from home, they can't necessarily know if you're working or if you're folding laundry. And while our company offers the flexibility where we can, particularly now, where you can work more throughout the days during your hours, you have to make sure that you're getting your work done. You have to make sure that you're putting the hours in that you're required to put in. And that personal responsibility can be a struggle for a lot of people.
I think that something that goes along with the lines of personal responsibility, which, Stephanie was talking about, is greatly increased with working from home because you don't have that external check-in, is communication, which kind of completely changed with working remotely because if I needed something from Stephanie, I could walk down the hall, check in and be like, hey, do you have a second to look over this? I need help with this, or have you got this done? If I had assigned work to someone, I could easily be like, hey, where are we at on this? Do you need assistance? But when you're working remotely, my assumption is that everyone's doing what they should be doing, whether that's always true. But my assumption is that everyone's doing what they should be doing and getting projects done. But I also know that people aren't just working on my projects, or that I'm not just working on one other person's projects. I've got 10 client projects going on at the same time. And so it's a lot harder to check in on people in a casual way. It feels like a lot more pressure when someone's like, hey, where's this at? When it's sent via email or via Jabber, which is our instant messaging system, versus someone just stopping by when they're, saying their hellos and being like, hey, just wanted to see how things were. And it requires a lot more effort on the person preparing the return, the audit, whatever, that they make sure they're reaching out with questions. I think that that's something that is sometimes hard for especially new hires to do. They feel a lot less comfortable. You don't know people as well. You don't know how they're going to take questions. And so that's always a barrier in general when new hires start in the office. And then that becomes a much scarier thing when you're at home and they're at home and you don't know, you want to reach out, but are they doing something else? I don't know if they're busy. What are they doing? But you have to make sure you're reaching out. And that's not just from a preparer side, that comes from a manager supervisor side too, of relearning how to recreate the connections and not lose the culture and lose the relationships you have with your coworkers.
And I think one of the first experiences I had where I was failing to downward communicate to a new hire, he had been working on a trial balance that should take him an hour, but because we weren't sitting side by side, he wasn't sure what questions to ask, so he didn't ask any, and it was like 8 or 9 hours later that he realized that it could have been as easy as pushing a single button. And I feel like that was a failure on both ends, because I didn't check in on him and he didn't ask any questions saying like, does this take that long? And developing those relationships over internet has been a struggle for me personally, but I think with having the flexibility to come into the office, you can sort of plan specific people to come into the office to limit your COVID exposure to start with, and to determine what job you're going to start working on that day or touch base with. Because on the audit side, while we may not have like 900 projects going on at once, we definitely have like 4 or 5 big ones to tackle at a time. And while the manager may not always be working at the same time, but all the staff should be aware of what each other's doing to not step on each other's toes.
Yes, and I think we always stress, particularly for new hires, we always stress ask questions. And I think it's also one of the things that new hires struggle with the most, is because as a new hire, you're in your chair, you feel like everybody is expecting you to know how to do the thing that they have given you to do, and you try to figure it out yourself, and you're not confident in asking questions. That is amplified by 10 now in a remote environment, is that you have to be willing, no matter how you feel or whatever you think the expectations are, you have to be just willing to reach out to somebody and say, I don't have a clue. Like, I don't even know what you want me to do here. And those are, for us, perfectly logical things to say, because sometimes when we give things to new hires, they are things that you would never have experienced before. And Casey is right in that it's a two-way street. You know, us as managers and supervisors and partners are also learning that the communication has to go downstream as well as upstream. And we need to do a much better job of being clear of what the expectations are when we provide a job. But we also can't help if we don't know that there's something wrong. And it will always be my number one push thing: ask questions. Don't be afraid. Don't think you're bothering people. If you're bothering people, all they're going to do is say, I can't get to you right now. I'll answer your questions in a little bit. That doesn't mean that they're going to be upset at you. They're just telling you they're busy. But ask the questions, get in front of people, put yourself out there and say, hey, I want to do a good job. I just don't know how to do it.
And I think along the lines of how to stand out and improve your competency, prove your talent and your worth to the firm that you're working for, the company that you're working for, is that asking questions will do that. I think that oftentimes, I think what we've all said is that you get in your head that asking questions shows that I am an idiot, or that I don't know what I'm doing, or that I should have known this. But really what it shows is that, hey, I took the time to go through this. Here's the parts that I can kind of follow this, but I don't understand this. And just by asking the question and being open to the knowledge and open to asking it is going to make you stand out in a good way. I mean, it's always best. You want to make sure you're going through everything, because you might answer your own question on the way, but having those questions and taking the initiative to take charge of the project and take responsibility for the project, it's always going to make you look better in the end. And that's going to be something that we know from a management side, that if you're willing to ask those questions and to, kind of work your way through these, like a challenging topic, I'm going to be much more likely to give you a harder project next time. Or just to be able to trust that, okay, I'm going to give this to this person, and now I can trust that they're going to get it done. They're going to reach out to me with questions. It's going to make, it just increases the level of, respect's not the right word. I mean, I respect everyone, but the level of respect I have in your work, that you're going to be ultimately getting to a better product because you're willing to take the time and ask the questions to get there.
And you can ask people to slow down their responses, because we speak as if we know what we're talking about. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're asking the question, we probably have the answer from a new hire to a manager, supervisor, senior associate level. But I forget that sometimes new hires don't know what I'm talking about. And so I've been asked to slow down, and they take notes, and that's helpful for them to look back on. Because we use caseware, and I thought it was a very normal thing that there's an Excel formula that links caseware to Excel. And the new hire's like, I don't know what you're talking about. That wasn't taught in school. And I'm like, oh, that probably wasn't, because you guys don't have that service. And while he was like, okay, I think I know what's going on, had he not asked the question, he would have sat there with a broken Excel sheet for hours.
Right.
And then he got to learn that if you ask the question and write down the answer, that you can apply it to 900 other different scenarios, even if it's not the exact same. Because he learned that, okay, we can now connect things in Excel. Well, what else can I do? And take a little bit of initiative to try to better the work papers from next year.
I will say one of my first experiences as a new hire myself that was very nerve-wracking is that the boss man of the tax department used to like giving new hires an assignment. It may or may not have been relevant to an actual client, but they were usually a little bit above your pay grade, and it was more just to see how you handled the situation.
Not well. I didn't handle my project well.
But
got it.
so my project was working on IC discs. And when I got that, I was supposed to research and tell him whether or not a client should think about having an IC disc. I didn't even know what an IC disc was. So he was telling me this, and I was like, okay. So I did research, and then I went and asked him a question, and he said a bunch of words that I didn't have any idea what they meant. I had no idea what he was saying to me. And he just looked at me. He's like, do you know what I'm saying? And I was like, no, could you please try that in a different language? And then he was like, okay, I will try it differently. But it is perfectly acceptable to be like, what you just said was far too experienced for me. And that's really all it is experience. It's far too experienced for me. I need you to bring it back down to like plain English where normal people can understand things. And he sort of did. He's way up here on the experience level. So
we still haven't reached this level of knowledge.
Before we continue impromptuing things, I will let you guys ask any questions if you have any or any curiosities, just about how anything, yes, but how the virtual environment works, how things are working here, whatever you would like. Or if you want us to just keep talking about how to work in the firm, we can do that as well.
We got lots of things we can say. I don't know, should there be a chat thing that we need to be looking at?
Well, that's a good question.
So people can unmute and say things. That too.
That's horrible.
Is this everybody, or is there another page?
No, I think that's everyone.
Okay.
I don't see an arrow. That's another thing, as I'm sure you guys have done by now, is you learn about 5 million different platforms for virtual interactions.
Any questions?
We're gonna give it like 1 minute. No, we're just sitting here.
Okay, I got one. So what is something that has happened because of the whole work from home, virtual kind of COVID related or COVID spurred thing that you would like to see solidified in the future? So like something that you want to become the norm.
Clients sending us work papers via email or Excel, because in my client base is mostly rural West Virginia. There are still places that don't believe in copiers. They like to hand us a baker's box worth of printed information and tell us to scan it in. They literally print Excel spreadsheets onto a piece of paper and then hand it to us. And without being able to go visit them, mailing or emailing the actual original document has been a lifesaver. Makes 10 times more sense, as you can see the formulas on how they've calculated everything. It also made them answer the phone more often, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I've never tried to call so many people with them actually answering, because usually we're just right there in the office, and then if I left after the week of field work, I'd call them, they'd put me on the voicemail, and then they'd get back to me later. But now it's like, oh crap, I actually have to answer this phone call, because it could be like the question they would have walked down into the office and asked me in person.
Yeah, I think that I mean, part of what I want to say is I do like the flexibility. We already had a lot of that flexibility in place. I think now it's even more accepted. It was accepted before, but now everyone's clearly very used to it. But we already had some of that flexibility in place as it was. So I was a little used to that. It was nice to have home cooked meals during tax season and not just takeout. But I think that the thing that I would like to see stick around and as kind of a hybrid would be kind of more virtual meetings with my clients. I think that it is a benefit for the clients that I maybe only see once a year, and I still want to see them in person once a year. I think it's hard. It's a very hard thing to keep up client relationships when you're not in person, especially because there are many clients that don't have the need in their work life to be on a virtual platform all the time. So they're not quite as used to it. They're not quite as comfortable with it. So it can be harder to continue to develop those relationships. But I think that I have been in far more client meetings remotely that maybe would have been a phone call or an email, which are great. You know, you can still, it's good to follow things up with an email, then you have a trail. But that being able to do some of those things virtually over WebEx or Zoom or whatever, you are able to see the person and get immediate reactions and kind of show how responsive you are as a as you know, their CPA and their advisor. So I think that has been a plus for the clients that, you know, you just don't see as often face to face.
I think in general, not only the, sorry, hang on a bit. Not only the web-based interactions, but just the interactions in general with the clients, I would like to keep at this level. When this whole pandemic happened, a lot of things changed very quickly for a lot of our clients, and they didn't quite know how to handle it. So there was a lot more interaction with clients. There was a lot more talking to them as consultants, not necessarily somebody just trying to get the last piece of information to file a tax return. I think it really helped to create stronger bonds between the clients and feel more like you were an active part helping your clients get through this whole thing, do the right thing, make the right choices kind of thing. And I just feel over this past time that constant kind of client engagement needs to be a thing that carries forward. I think it's very easy in this particular day and age to just be like, oh, I'll just email somebody. But an email is a super impersonal way to do a thing, and you don't get to know the client that way because emails can be taken in 800 different tones. And you don't get that face-to-face interaction, you don't get that voice interaction. And so it's important to keep that personal connection going with the clients.
Especially with the emails, you don't learn the extra stuff. Like if you're on, especially if you're on like a meeting or a virtual meeting, inevitably things that they're planning on in the future comes up, or things about their family come up. You know, you learn the extra things that when you're writing an email, you're not going to say that. There's no need. It's not answering the question. It's not furthering the conversation of whatever work matter you're discussing.
Or you get to experience the joys of a kitten giving birth while you're trying to get tax information together.
Give birth?
No,
oh,
Gail.
The phone call. Yeah, that's true. We have had cats give birth during tax times. It was a very stressful moment, I think, for the clients. Just trying to answer tax questions while literally a kitten's coming out. So
I had a client who had she owns a farm of alpacas. Yes. And had we not
alpacas,
had we not been on video conference, I would not have known that she got hit in the face with an alpaca foot. She was wearing a neck brace.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that wouldn't have come across in an email like, how did you accidentally get hit by an alpaca? Like
That's just like bang her with her.
I didn't ask too
head?
many questions.
I
I'm
would
pretty
have
sure
asked
she might have been on
questions.
some painkillers. But those are kind of the moments that you'll miss, like building even the personable relationships rather than, hey, I need this for my tax return, or I need this for my audit. But at the same time, I'm going to flip the question because I ran out of things to think of and say what I don't want to stay. And I don't want to stay in the world of every deadline has now been extended beyond its original date.
Yes.
Because clients and ourselves have both decided to procrastinate in the world of uncertainty.
Yes. There's one truth. It doesn't matter when the deadline is. The procrastinators are going to get you their information the day before whatever deadline it is.
People
it doesn't
who don't
matter.
have their stuff done by 3:15 or 4:15 don't have their stuff until maybe September 1st or October 1st.
Right.
Maybe. We got a lot of people still straggling in that's going to be coming in on October 12th. So with the July 15th deadline and just all these extended deadlines,
this is my first deadline since coronavirus hit, was 10/15. And I now have had more benefit plans, which is the 10/15 deadline, get procrastinated because I'm like, oh, we don't have access to the information, sorry. Like, okay, we've been living in this world for 6 months now. We all need to adapt and learn from our mistakes. And this 10/15 deadline did not get extended, but they decided to procrastinate anyways. And I think internally we also did a little bit too because we didn't push them hard enough. But I feel like on the tax side, you guys had your finish line and it just got moved.
Yeah.
The race didn't stop; it just got moved.
Right. I think it turned the year into a bit of a marathon with sprints in the middle. You'd be like running for 50 miles and then it's all right, we got to sprint the next 2 miles and then we're still marathoning. And that's, I think we're going to feel the effects of that in 2021.
Yeah. That was a very weird experience because, you know, we have a tax season that ends April 15th typically. So, you know, all right, we're going to work hard till April 15th and then we're good. We're going to just stare at the computer like zombies for like the next week.
Yeah, sounds right.
But then like COVID hit, we got sent home. Like, was it right after the March deadline?
March 16th was the March deadline because March 15th was on a Sunday, and I
March
believe it
18th
was
was
March
the
18th.
email.
Yeah, when it came.
So just after our corporate deadline, they sent us home, and then they extended the
April
4/15
yeah.
deadline, and everybody was like, "How do we work now? Like,
And
what do we do? Do we still do things by 4/15, or do we just wait until 7/15?" And it was very strange.
And it's kind of hard to, you know, there's a pandemic going on that comes with its own mental stressors. So you're handling the idea of a global crisis, and then also that audits and tax returns still need done. So I would like that to not. I would like to only need to stress about one thing. That would be great. That's the thing I don't want to last. I would like to only stress about one thing at a time.
Yeah.
That's probably never going to happen in life, but
I think
at least not global crisis stresses. So
also learning to check in on the mental health of coworkers, because if you're stressing, they're probably also stressing.
Yes.
Which this isn't supposed to be some kind of like mental health advertisement, but at the same time, if you're losing your crap and you're in your house working, I bet your coworkers are too, and they probably need that 10-15 minute coffee conversation that they've missed out on as a mental break from the workday.
Yes. We set up little teams to talk in that were just like
just
4
like
or 5 of
check-ins.
us. Yeah, which was literally just like a weekly check-in or a bi-weekly check-in. And we have a women's initiative here at the firm, so we've had coffee breaks virtually with that. And they all seem kind of silly on the surface, right? That you're like, oh, great, I get to sit here while everyone takes turns talking, and then 5 people try to talk at once, and then everyone takes turns talking, and that just keeps going on. And so at first you're like, oh, do I really want to do this? But when you get in there, they end up being a fun time, and it feels good to see other faces.
And it feels good to just interact
right.
without like having to ask a specific question. And it does. And I think that's one of the things that I miss most when I work remotely or for the extended period of time is is you do miss out on those just random conversations in the hallway, or just some randomly talking about what some crazy thing somebody did that weekend, or
Kelsey having a baby.
Kelsey having a baby. So I miss that, and I think those virtual interactions really help with that.
I started making things that would be a phone call to like Stephanie about something, be like, hey, let's jump on WebEx for 5 minutes, which turned into more, for a virtual call. So then you're seeing your coworkers face to face rather than just, even if it's just like a 5-second chat.
And I can appreciate learning more about people by their surrounding environments.
Yes.
Because Josh Dyson was one of them. I was caught off guard by his home environment.
What's it look like?
It's very Josh once I say that now. But there's like Pokemon in the back.
Yes.
Golden Girls.
Yes.
And had I not already known Josh, I would have thought he was the guy that was the typical accountant, because he wears blue and gray every single day of his life.
That's true.
So, I mean, while I already knew Josh, I guess Justin Shoemaker would be a better one. He's the partner on the healthcare audit side, and he had his cat go across his camera the entire time. He grew a coronavirus beard, and he got to introduce his kids.
There was a lot of coronavirus beards that were grown.
Yeah.
There's
during
still a
the
lot of
time
coronavirus
period.
hair.
Yeah, there's a lot of coronavirus hair happening.
Yeah, we got to meet his kids that we wouldn't have ever met in any other scenario.
Well, that's only because you're not here when Disney on Ice is here.
That is true. But Disney on Ice
dress
got
up for
canceled.
Disney on Ice. So, right. So, any other questions?
Yes.
Bueller.
So when
Sorry.
does this meeting end? I don't want to make people stay longer than they have to.
Kind of whenever. I mean, usually it lasts at least like 45 minutes, an hour-ish. But these are different circumstances than we normally have. So
Yeah. Between the three of us, we could talk for at least another 3 hours. But
Well,
true.
I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
And if you guys just kind of want to throw out an answer,
Or chat and answer.
or chat and answer. If you don't want to talk, that's totally cool. Now that I can actually see the chat. So Cassie was talking earlier, and I wanted to kind of get back to it. You were about taking ownership of a project. And I just wanted to know what you guys think of when you hear someone say take ownership. What does that mean to you guys? Like, if I was to just be like, you really need to step up and take ownership of a thing, what would you do?
This sounds like an essay question on an AP exam.
Well, okay.
Don't make it that difficult.
Don't overthink it. Just tell me, because I think there are things that we say that we don't always explain what exactly we're saying.
I think that happens quite frequently.
Yes. So I was just curious, because that is something you'll hear a lot, is about taking responsibility for things, taking ownership for things. And I just would like to see, without having context, what do you imagine that means?
that always, for me, it reminds me of like what my dad always told me, like when I was working on something was basically just to be able to be proud of your work. Like taking ownership of something is something that like you can stand beside, you can stand behind, and you can say, yes, like this has my stamp of approval. So that's what comes to my mind, is like basically my dad goes through my head, which is kind of scary.
You could definitely build a 5-paragraph AP essay with that, with the intro, body, and conclusion.
Watch us
I like
pop
that.
up on like the ethics final.
Yeah. What does taking ownership mean to you? Anyone else?
We got a couple good comments.
Don't we?
As we all throw the phone.
Yes, Jed said, I've always interpreted the term take ownership as take responsibility and make yourself indispensable. And Annika, am I saying that right? To think of the project's successes or failures as your own successes or failures. And all three of those answers kind of sum up exactly what it is. So when you're a new client, when you're a new employee, it's hard to feel like you have ownership of anything, right? Because you've got partners in charge of clients. You're not familiar with what the client is or what they're doing or what's going on. And people are just saying, take ownership. And you're like, how am I supposed to take ownership of things? But these answers are exactly it. What people want to see when they say take ownership is show that you care about the client. Take some time to get to know the client or ask questions about the client. Make sure think of the project successes and failures as your successes and failures. You want to almost think of, I'm a new hire, but I'm going to act as if I'm the one in charge of making this client happy. And within your role, think of, okay, what can I do? A lot of times that comes across as you want to make sure that what you give to the reviewer or the partner is what you consider ready to go to the client. If you're sending something to a partner, but you wouldn't be proud of it going directly to the client, then maybe you should take another look at it and see, okay, would I feel good if the client had this in their hand right now?
One added aspect I would add to it, because one of my first engagements, it was an engagement partner, a senior manager, myself, and a supervisor. And he asked me why I did something. And I looked at him like, well, that's what we did last year. And that was not a reasonable answer. And I would
it's
like
the accurate answer, but
yes. But going forward, I learned that even taking ownership of your work is knowing why you did something, which it doesn't have to be 100% correct, but you have to support the decisions you made along the process. And I don't know if that works as much in the tax side, but on the audit side, as long as you can reasonably debate kind of why you took a stance, it can be interpreted one way or another. And you might be told you're wrong. That happens all the time still in my work. But at least you thought it through enough to have a decision made with reasonable support.
Yes. I don't know that
we work so much more in the gray, I think.
Yes, I think we do try to we try to tell people, because you don't know what you're doing when you first come in, to use the prior year's returns or the prior year work papers as kind of a guide. Knowing that it takes years for you to really be comfortable with why you're doing a thing. So at some points, yes, because it was done last year is an acceptable answer. At some points, it's not. That confuses the waters and muddies the waters. I'm just
you're confusing your
mixing
saying.
my metaphors.
Oh, the alliteration. The only other thing I would add to the taking ownership of things is that frequently when I put someone on a client, not if it's necessarily some 1040s, I don't feel like this way if they're smaller 1040s, but frequently when I'm putting someone on a client, be it when I was doing employee benefit plan audits or when I'm assigning out a business tax return, I am wanting that person to learn this year. They're going to have a lot of things to learn in their first year. They're going to have a lot of things to learn in their second and third too. But that my intention, as long as everything goes well, is to put them on that client again the next year, because what I want to happen is to develop a client relationship team. I'm the current client contact. They're reaching out to me. They're reaching out to the partner above me for whatever they need. And now they're going to know this person. And so I want them to be able to be like, this is now my client that I'm going to be handling for the next however many years. And that, someday I'm going to transition into Cassie's role now, and I will be teaching a new associate what they're supposed to be doing, because that's how the flow of things should be. So, when you take ownership of something, think about it in a future way of, this will someday be my client. Let me build these relationships. Let me learn more about what they actually do. Let it be more than just numbers on a page.
And the day you actually get to call them your client makes it so much better. I don't know, because I finally got to that point where I was no longer the staff of the engagement, but kind of like an in-charge role. And I finally get to say, like, oh, this one's my client, and we're going to do this, and I know this about them, and I can do this, this, and this, and this, and this is why we did it last year. And it's kind of a point of pride, I guess, because you put in the time and the effort to develop that relationship.
Even when the client's kind of a hot mess, you feel this pride.
Those are even better.
It's true, because you're like, oh, they're a hot mess, but here's how we handle it. And
this is my dumpster fire.
Yes. And so, it's kind of exciting, but you also have a little twinge of sorriness for whoever you drag onto the dumpster fire with you. But it's kind of like we're going through it together, and it bonds you. So there's that.
One of the other things I want to touch on It's boring and it's technical, but I think it's important to say that when, and this is something you guys can practice now, and that's grammar in email. Learning how to write a professional email or communication to somebody is very important, because you will be asked to draft emails or send emails to clients. And you need to be very aware of how you're presenting things. And little things too, because I do it myself, and I actually find myself reading an email like 5 or 6 times to make sure I'm not doing something stupid. But someone had drafted an email, and in the email was the line, you need to go through and look at these things, except he spelled through THRU. And that's not how you spell through. That's a nice, easy shorthand way of spelling through, but it's gonna look too casual to a client if you send that sort of thing. So you always wanna try and be aware of the tone of your email, and also the words you're using and how you're saying things to be a professional email.
And don't be afraid to run your draft by someone else that's not the complete recipient.
Oh,
I do this all the time.
We do this to each other. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna send an email. Can you read this before I send it? Does it have this tone, or does it sound okay? Or
what do I need to change here to make this better? Literally all the time. All the time.
All the time.
I mean, that's just how you get through, because you don't want to sound like an idiot or come off as it has some tone that you didn't intend. And that professional writing skill has clearly become way more important for 2020. When you can't see people face to face, both with your coworkers and your clients, you want to make sure that they are reading what you intended to say.
Yes. Also,
go ahead.
No, you go first.
'Tis the season for recruiting season. Don't be afraid to run your resumes by other people as well, because that is a very easy way to just get removed from the pile to start with. That's all I really got.
No, that's very accurate. Very accurate.
I was just going to say, when you're reading your emails, and this is also good to run it by people. Well, there's 2 things that I do consistently. Well, maybe I should say 3 things. I like to randomly capitalize things. In my head, anything that's important, I'm going to capitalize it. And so I have to make sure that I'm not capitalizing things. I use a lot more commas than I need to use. So I always have to go through and read for that. But you want to make sure, I think one of the harder things for new hires to know is that when you're writing an email asking somebody a question, they don't have the information you have. And so you want to make sure that you're being very explicit about what you're asking. And don't be vague and say, what are they doing, without explaining who they is. So you just want to make sure that you're very detailed in how you're saying something, because it's very easy for you to go, I have all this knowledge in my head, I'm going to send an email with the assumption that the other person has all this knowledge in their head, and they don't, and they're going to get your email and be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Also, make sure you spell their name right. It's in their email.
Yes.
It's right there in front of you. It's probably they have emailed you first, and their name is in their signature. It's right there. The amount of times that someone spells my name wrong is a lot, because I'm Cassie with an I, C-A-S-S-I, no E. And it's not that I'll hold that against you forever.
So you should all send her a thank you email, spelling it C-A-S-S-I-E, so then she can come and talk to me about it.
Pretty sure your signature says Cassandra.
It does.
My email signature says Cassie.
Does it?
Yes, to everyone. My email signature says Cassie. My LinkedIn says Cassandra. You connect with me on LinkedIn. Any other questions? Don't be shy.
Nothing?
We're fun people.
Since you brought up LinkedIn and stuff, how important do you think like social media presence and building those connections online is?
Well, I'm gonna not start with the building relationships part, because that's gonna be a different answer. But so we're gonna start with one, and then we're gonna go into the other. The social media presence is very important during recruiting season, especially. Take a look at what your social media profile of all kinds, every single kind, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, anything I'm not thinking of. Probably not your TikTok. I'm not going to go look for you on there. Probably not your Snapchat. We're not friends there. Take a look at it and do a cleanse. Do a nice cleanse of it, because you will be surprised the amount of times we do Google lots of the people that we interview, partially because I feel like I've met a lot of people, Stephanie and I, and now Casey, do a lot of these recruiting events. I feel like I'll recognize a name and I want to try and put a face to the name and see if I've met them before. So I'll Google you, and on Google comes up a ton of different social media things, and I click at them because, that's interesting. And we've had a lot of interesting things come from that. There'll be some girl doing a keg stand as her profile pic, or maybe some guy with the anarchy t-shirt and like a F the world poster behind him. And that's not great. That's probably not going to get you a job. There could be those people that work here right now, and those things happen, but maybe don't make them your profile picture. Don't make it so easily accessible that we can see all the dirty little secrets.
I'm also going to reach out and say that we do have people that also just came out of college. So while we three may not be connected with you on social media, we know someone that is.
That's true. That's true.
So I would add Snapchat to your list, because
okay,
I have done
Snapchat.
That.
Don't be putting crazy stuff on your Snapchat. Do like my cousin did and block your relatives and your employers from trying to see that.
There are private stories for a reason.
Yes, I will say, not just even in recruiting season, as this is something that we have seen, but you'll want to think fairly seriously about whether you want business associates as friends on Facebook or friends on Instagram or whatever, depending on how you use your social media. Number one, if you have a bunch of Facebook friends that work with you and you're going to post a status like, oh my God, I can't stand my job, I'm just going to screw around for the next 3 hours, people at work are seeing that.
That's happening.
And people do that without thinking about it. Also, not to delve too deep into this subject, but be aware of potentially controversial things you're posting. If you want to post it, that's fine, but maybe not have friends at work on your friends, because what's something that you might feel strongly and passionately about, somebody else at work might feel the same way in the opposite direction. And it can cause a lot of uncomfortable feelings that you may not have intended to create. So just be very aware of the things that you're putting up there. And if you want to just, be yourself and do your thing, then maybe having business friends is not necessarily the way to go.
Now, from the building relationships on social media, from a recruiting standpoint, I think it's always nice if someone reaches out to me like via the LinkedIn mail. If you Facebook message me through that way that like you can message someone that's not friends with you, I'll probably not see it, because that's happened before for a long time.
Also, she didn't check her Facebook for like months.
That's true. You try to message me on Facebook, it's going to be a solid week before I get back to you, because I don't have it on my phone, because I'll just be on it too much. And then if I get on it, I'm on it for 3 hours. So I regulate myself. But I feel like it'd be a little creepy if you message like someone that is a potential employer on like the Facebook, we're not friends, but I can still message you way.
Or even Instagram. I'm throwing that one in there.
Yeah. Any way that you can reach out to that's probably not LinkedIn, probably too far unless you know them from some other thing. Like if, I don't know, if we're in some sort of professional group together, that might be a whole different story.
Yeah.
But if it's just we're potential, I'm a potential hiring person and you're interviewing with us, probably don't want that. But on the LinkedIn, that's a great way to reach out and message someone and connect in a different format. We can have a whole conversation. I can answer questions that you might have. So I think that probably that's the best way to go from a building relationships from the recruiting season aspect of it. I do think, I mean, I'm a person that struggled a lot with trying to figure out once I was hired as to if I should accept friend requests or not from people I work with. I do typically, which has led to great things because then I get to see cute pictures of like people's babies and, you know, the fun things they did on vacation while I was still here at work or vice versa. So, you know, those are good times. But I think from, like Stephanie said, you've really got to think about what you're putting out there, because I don't really post a lot to my social media because I'm lazy, but also because it's just not, you just never know who's seeing it. So
The grandma smell test, if she wouldn't approve, it probably needs to have a second thought on if you need to post it or not.
and my neighborhood grandma is my Facebook friend. Like she's not my real grandma, but she's my neighborhood grandma. And I don't want Doris to think terribly of me because she's a lovely woman. So, all right, more. Does that fully answer your question? Did we?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Look at my creepy smile.
Going once, going twice.
Last chance. All right, well, if you do have any questions that you didn't feel like asking in a group, you can feel free to reach out to us. You can find our email addresses if you would like on the website,
Which is actcpas.com.
yes. But I think that's what we have. I do want to again apologize for being late and having this be as impromptu as it was. But hopefully there have been some helpful things to come out of this.
Hopefully there have been some good nuggets in there that you can take away and become super successful superstars wherever you all end up being. All right. Well,
I for sure got at least a few nuggets out of that and really enjoyed I think the impromptu nature showed off your guys' culture way better than the presentation probably would have. Which for me is one of the top highlights and one of the reasons I absolutely love ACT. But that's just a little personal highlight.
it's why we love ACT too.
Go Herd.
Go Herd.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Casey was ready for a basketball game. She was leaving work to have a healthy work-life balance right before.
But this is life. This is fun. This is not
fun.
work. This is showing up and talking about your day in a laid back way, at least.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is fun. Anyways, we'll let you continue, Ashlee. Sorry.
Oh, that's totally fine. I don't think people have proved they don't have any more questions. So that's pretty much all I have, I think. Next week, we're not going to be doing like an official meeting. We're going to be posting some of the Huntington Visit the Firms videos that the firms submit. So be watching your guys' emails for those. Hopefully we get some good videos for that. That was our virtual replacement of the tour. So hopefully that goes out as well as it's theoretically been planned. And then the week after that, we have the Visit the Firms event, which will be very similar to Meet the Professionals. So the firms that are participating in that will be in Microsoft Teams, and they'll each have their channel. Very similar to before with Meet the Professionals if you were participating in that. And they'll have a specific time slot for each firm that you'll sign up for. But there'll be more information to follow once we have more things finalized. But yeah, so that's all for me. I don't know if anybody has anything else. Nope. Okay. Well, yeah, going once, going twice, and sold. But thank you guys so much for the impromptu visit. It was very enjoyable for me.
Well, hopefully there was that.
It sounds like you guys have had a lot of fun with it too. So if you do play basketball later, good luck with your game.
Probably lose, but it's fine.
It's all for the fun of it.
It really is. Keep that heart rate up for a second, and then wheezing.
Promptly afterwards.
Thanks, Stephanie. I hated to message you.
Oh, no problem. I didn't see the first one, but yeah, no problem. Anytime.
There were some quick cell phone calls of being like, get in the office right now.
I may have done that.
Yeah, I was like, should I message her? Should I not? Well, I guess I should. So.
Well, I'm glad you did,
Yeah,
because I would have hated it to turn out any other way. So
agreed.
we are always happy to help and present and be part of Beta Alpha Psi.
We really do enjoy this.
Well, I think
it's like the company line.
I think it turned out great. I mean, it was impromptu, but that's okay. That's life in the virtual world.
It really is.
That's such a good tagline.
And in the virtual world, you can wear your workout clothes to work.
Right.
Dude, in the virtual world, from working from home, you can wear some like leggings plus a nice outfit on top, and no one knows.
Right.
It's so nice. There are perks. That's the other thing that would be nice to stick around from a virtual world, is every great now and then I get to wear
The business mullet.
I
feel like we've hit the
we're not
mingling
calling it the
period.
business mullet. We're not doing that. This is not a thing.
Are you sure? Because that's a great name.
It's really not. It's really not. We're not doing it. Stephanie can do it.
I like that term though.
Oh God. That's apparently going to become a thing.
I'm gonna start it on the audit side. Stephanie can tackle the tax side. We only have to tackle consulting then.
Right.
Consulting's easy. We got consulting. We'll get in through Stephen and Kelsey.
True.
Got a plan. Anyways,
I think we've hit the mingling portion of the meeting.
Yes.
we'll stick around if anyone does want to mingle,
And just
but
chat.
don't feel pressured to.
Now's your chance to leave.
True. Take it and run.